Hi everybody, this is Lynn Serafinn from TrentinoGenealogy.com, and today is Filo Friday in September. It is the 7th, not the 7th, I wrote down the 7th. It's not the 7th of September, it is the 4th of September 2020. And today's topic I'll tell you in a minute. First of all, wanted to remind you what Filo is. And Filo is a tradition in Trentino, or it was a tradition in Trentino before the age of technology, of storytelling, basically between dinner time and bedtime. And it's when all the family got together and one person would get up front. It was usually the head of the household, but I have a feeling they took turns a bit, to share stories. It was a way of passing on oral history, a way of entertainment when you didn't have radio or TV, a way, well, I'm sure the kids liked it quite a lot too, a way of educating, a way of preserving family history, I think, as well. And, just to be creative and to bring people together. And also on a practical level, it kept people warm in the wintertime because they used to huddle together in the, very often in the basements of the big mountain houses where the cattle and the sheep and whatever were staying in the wintertime, and that all the body heat kept them warm. So it had a lot of functions. And the word filo, it comes from the word for spinning, and it is used because it's a double meaning. One is spinning of the tail, I think. I always think of it that way. But it also was traditionally the time that women used to spin the yarns and the threads, make the threads for clothing, because everything was handmade, right? So anyway, so that's why we call it Filo Friday. A lot of you are familiar with Filo magazine, which I don't run, but I do write for, and so it means the same thing. So it's a really proud part of our culture. So anyway, I was doing these very frequently when we were all in lockdown. Now that some of us have a bit more freedom to go here and there, and also because I've been very, very busy, I'm only doing them once a month now. And so today's the first Friday. I'm doing on the first Friday of every month. And so today's the first Friday, and here we are. I mentioned to some of you that I might be switching to Zoom, but not yet, because I can kind of run it, but running it in a group, I'm not quite sure yet, and I'll figure it out. But for now, we're staying in Facebook. Okay, so today, the podcast, title of the podcast is Diving Deeper into Cloz. And Cloz is a little village, a little parish that I have just researched. Thank you for letting me know that you can hear me. I'm seeing other people coming in. Great. Thank you very much, Susan. And some of you read the article I published yesterday. And I want to just remind you, it's not, the reason why I focused on Cloz is not because it's the most important parish in the whole province. It's simply because that's what I was working on. It started with a project for Jean Pancari, that he wanted me to do. And then I just got really into it. And I said, you know what, I've done so much work on this parish. Now, I might as well write I was going to start the series on Val di Non anyway. So I might as well start with Cloz. And then I thought, well, I also have to do Filo Friday, and I can't keep thinking up all kinds of different topics. So I might as well bring them all together. However, this is not going to be a rerun of the article, okay? I don't want to insult your intelligence by just taking you through what I said in the article. You can read the article. I gave you a lot of details in there. But what I want to do is bring up some of the points from the article and talk more about the context of how what they say about research, or the research processes that I used in coming to some of the conclusions that I did. We'll look a little bit deeper into some of the surnames, but not so much. Just a little bit more about how I traced certain things, so that you can start thinking about how you can look for things that maybe if you're struggling in trying to find your ancestors. Okay, so here we go. So the first thing I want to touch upon, I'm going to be covering 4 topics. I think I wrote down 4. So the first of the 4 topics is how history, and this was something that really I found surprising, and I didn't really talk about it that much in the article, but I'm going to share a little more detail about it here. How history, the history of the province, affects the surviving records that we have access to. Okay? If you recall, or if you didn't recall, I'll tell you now. In the article, I mentioned that there is a big gap in the Cloz records in around the beginning of the 1800s. It's very frustrating because there's a huge gap in the births, but there's also gaps in the marriage records and death records, and there's also bits and pieces of records that are just plain missing, just gone. You know, people that I know exist, and I know that they were born in a certain year or within a 1 year period, but records are just not there. So, but the thing is, what I reflected on as I was looking at those years and also reflecting on what I read in the records was this. In the third volume, I think it's the third volume of the baptismal records for Cloz, one of the priests wrote something. It was a little hard to decipher, but he basically said, I'll put it in my own words. He basically said, you know, we had a lot of political stuff going on, and first we were here, and then we were part of Italy, and then we were part of Austria, and so we were told to put the records here, and then we were told to put the records there. So basically, all the birth records for this period are in another book. That's pretty much what he said. I'm putting it in modern language. He put it a little bit less slangy, a lot less slangy. But really, what he's talking about is this. If you look at those years that he's talking about, this is the end of the Napoleonic era. Now, if you don't know your history, let me just give you a little bit of a review. Napoleon marched into Trentino and caused all kinds of hell toward the end of the 1700s. It came into different places at different points. I've seen him appearing in the lower portion of the province in the 1790s. I don't know if he actually took the whole thing over. I'm not too good with remembering military dates, but in that period of time, he took control of the province. Now, he wreaked havoc. He did a lot of serious, heavy stuff. The one thing he did was he dissolved the principality. Now, what do I mean by principality? Principality means the way the province was governed. The province was governed by prince bishops, and he abolished it. He just abolished the office of the prince bishop, although I was told some bishops still had that title for a while. But in terms of government control, you know, they were no more. They were still bishops, but they were church only. They had nothing to do with government anymore. So that was abolished. So that's what we call the principality, meaning that Trentino was run by a prince bishop. And so he got rid of that, and that was in existence for 800 years or so, thereabouts. It was a long time. And the other thing he did was he abolished nobility, at least officially. There were some families who survived past Napoleon, at least through the end of the 19th century. A lot of the lower nobles just kind of lost all their noble titles and privileges and this and this and this. So he was basically he was secularizing and defeudalizing Trentino and most of Europe, but he was also and he was a dictator. So he wasn't just bringing us into the modern era. I mean, this is also the same time right after the American Revolution. You have to look at the years, okay? So there was all this idea of separation of church and state and secularization going on everywhere. But he was a dictator. He was a tyrant. He was really, really mean and vain. So, but anyway, he didn't last very long in Trentino, only like about 15 years or less, 10, 15, about between roughly 1790 and 1805, roughly in there, but I think a little less actually, 10 years, 10, 15 years. The good thing that he did during that time period is he brought in the idea of standardized record keeping. So he wanted the churches to start keeping the tables, the templated records, which wasn't there before. If you notice, the older records are all really handwritten and they're kind of anybody's guess what's going to be in them. He mandated that they had to be standardized with columns that said certain things, and certain information always had to be recorded. Not all the priests bothered with much of it. They just kind of wrote, oh, it's Giovanni got married, or Giovanni died, he's buried, that's it, you know. But others complied, and they gave all this information. But here's the thing. He was overturned, overturned in the beginning of the 1800s. And for about 4 years, Trentino was actually under the umbrella of Italy for just 4 years. And then in 1814, I think is the year, it became again part of Austria, which was, more or less the same as it had been when it was under the Holy Roman Empire, same people, same, Habsburgs and whatnot. But what the priest is saying in the book, getting back to Cloz, what's the priest is saying? When we were under Italy, they told us to do it this way. When we were under Austria, they're telling us to do it that way. They told us here, and so as a result, all these records are in another book. That's what he's saying. I'm summarizing it. But here's the thing. When the Mormons photographed the collection, guess what? They didn't photograph that other book. The book exists, but it exists in Cloz. It never was microfilmed. And the digital records in Trento are digitized versions of those microfilms. Now, they're aware of this. The archivists in Trento are aware of this. And they're saying, or I asked them about this, I said, anybody going to do anything about this? This would be really great to get those records, because I have a feeling it's more than just baptismal records. I think it's a bunch of stuff. It'll fill in a lot of gaps. He said, yeah, we want to get that book and bring it to Trento and digitize it, but we have no agenda, no time frame for when that's going to happen. So fingers crossed. But here's the thing. I just bought, and I'm waiting for it. It should come next week, I hope. An overhead scanner, which so you can stick books underneath. Instead of scanning, putting books down, you open a book, scans it from above, and it digitizes it. And apparently you can scan like 300 pages in 10 minutes. It's portable. If it works as well as I hope, if somebody drives me up to Cloz when I go to Trento next time, I'll just sit there and photograph it myself and give it all to the province. Honestly, that's what I want to do. I want to go and fill in all these gaps if I can. I'd have to get permission from the priest, but I'll see. I'll let you know. It's something that came into my head today. I said, gee, instead of all the bureaucracy of them bringing it down, what if I just go do it and give it to them, and they can do it later if they don't like my job, but we'll see. But anyway, this is what I wanted to let you know. This is why those records are missing, because of bloody Napoleon and everybody else fighting. So the other thing that it made me think is there is a very frustrating gap in the Revolt records. And I'm going to talk about the proximity of all these parishes to each other in a minute. There's a very frustrating gap in the marriage records for Revolt around the same period. And this made me wonder, maybe they're not missing either. Maybe they just are also in another book. Maybe they weren't photographed. I don't know. I want to find that out too, but that only just came to me today because I was looking at the years and I'm saying, So politics can affect the records that we have access to, and that's point one. That's the topic one I wanted to bring you. I think it's kind of interesting, frustrating, but interesting. So let me go on to the next topic. Right. Okay. So now we know there are some gaps. Here, I want to share a little bit of the process that I used in getting around those gaps, because the gaps were causing a lot of problems in trying to move to a generation that I was trying to do. The reason why I was working in Cloz is Jean Pancari had asked me to do some work on the Rauzi family. Okay, you've seen me mention that name in some of the posts. And so at any rate, there was this one particular person, his name was Giacomo. I couldn't be sure who he was because of missing records. If I go into all the details, you'll get confused and it won't mean anything to you. But here's the thing. There were a couple of different guys that he could have been. And the question was, who is he? Which one is he? And knowing where the gaps were, I couldn't figure it out. So here's how I finally figured it out. And I'm 100% confident I did figure it out. And this is why. it wasn't anything to do with him. It had to do with his son. Okay, so Giacomo had a son named Vito. Okay, Vito got married in 1857, so way past the big gap in the records. And the marriage record is there. It tells all of the parents, which is great, all four of the parents, bride and groom's parents. And lo and behold, his wife, Domenica, is also a Razzi. Okay, so you've got Vito Razzi, Domenica Razzi, marrying each other. And also, Domenica's mother is a Razzi. So three of the four parents are Razzis. Okay, so bear that in mind. In that record, and if you remember, I wrote that article on marital dispensations, and I've talked about these a lot. Marital dispensations are some of the best clues in research that we have, if you understand what they mean, because sometimes they're written in a very weird way. This marriage dispensation, let me see if I look at the wording. Well, I translated it. In English, it said fourth grade consanguinity, and then in Italian it said, I mean, it didn't say it in English, I'm saying it in English, and then in Italian it said tangente al terzo. That means a tangent at the third. So that's a little obtuse sounding, but what I took that to mean was that they had a common ancestor or ancestors 4 generations back for one of them and 3 generations back for the other. So they, you know, because one of them was probably older than the other, or father or mother was probably a lot older than the other ones. So they didn't match up like second cousins, third cousins. They were something once removed. And if you calculate 4 generations back and 3 generations back like that, it ends up being second cousins once removed. Just take my word for it. It does. Okay. So I was looking for a relationship between this husband and wife of second cousins once removed, because that would tell me who his father was, right? Who I couldn't figure out who the heck he was. Because there were 2 men who fit the criteria, and I couldn't decide between the 2, and nothing I did worked. Why? Well, I made mistake number 1. Never assume the obvious. Now, I just told you 3 of the 4 parents were all named Razzi. Now, if you say this bride and groom are cousins, what are you going to assume? What did I assume? I assumed that they were related through the Razzi. Well, it didn't turn out that way. They actually were related via the one person who didn't have the same surname. And not only did she not have the same surname, it was one of the mothers. It was Vito's mother. His mother's surname was Bertagnolli. Now, those of you who are familiar with that name, I am. I've done research on it. I know that it's not from Cloz. It's not a Cloz surname. It's from Brez. It's from a different parish. And so I found her, and then I thought, well, I've tried everything else. Let me look at all the women. Well, sure enough, I went back a couple of generations, and on the other line, his wife's line was another Bertagnolli, and her grandmother or something was or her great-grandmother was a sister of his grandmother, something like that. But they were Bertagnolli, and that's how they were related. I ran a relationship chart using Family Tree Maker, which is the program that I use. And sure enough, they were second cousins once removed. I was so relieved. I told you all of this in the group. I said, I finally slept that night. I was going crazy. So the lessons learned from this are a couple of things. One, don't assume the obvious. Don't assume the obvious. If something's, even if there are 3 people with the same name, it is most likely they're related that way, but they may not be. So don't assume the obvious. The other thing is, just because the records aren't there, it isn't a dead end. You have to look for clues in everything. And in this case, to find out who Giacomo was, I had to figure out all about his son and then go backwards. And then finally I said, no, this is the only family who fits, and that's it. So don't get frustrated if records are missing. you can find information out. So that's the second topic. Second topic, what did I call that topic? It was about just trying to say, using clues in the records you do have. So topic 1 was about how history affects the lack of records. Topic 2 is using clues in, or looking for clues in the records that you do have, even if they're missing, others are missing. Okay, so now let me see. Topic 3, and this is really important. Topic 3, especially because I just mentioned Bertagnolli, okay? How did I find her so quickly? Because I was familiar with neighboring parishes. And this is topic 3. Get to know your ancestors' neighbors. It's really easy to get involved, really engrossed in just your immediate family's parish or even village, frazione. But if you're going to do serious research and try to go further back, you need to know something about adjacent parishes, and also you need to know the ones that are too far away, that are less likely to be involved. But you really get to know the adjacent parishes, and also it's important to get to know the surnames that are in those adjacent parishes. The fact that I already knew that Bertagnolli was found in Artio and Brez parish helped me find that line rather quickly. Now, if I didn't, I would be looking for, I'd probably still be looking, but because I knew that, it helped me quite a lot. So this is why in the article, I started with maps. The first thing I show you is where is Val di Non in relation to everything else in the province? And you can get an idea that, well, it's really not that close to Val Giudicaria, and it's really not that close to any some of these other parts of the province, but it's really close to the top of the province. And what it doesn't show you on the map is it's very close to South Tyrol as well, or Bolzano, province of Bolzano, they call it, as well as South Tyrol. Then I showed you another map of where Cloz is in the valley itself. So if you haven't looked at it, have a look at that. The reason why I'm sharing that, and the reason why I highlighted Cloz, is so that you could see all the parishes, all the villages that are surrounding it. Now, that's, again, really important. And if you look at it very closely, you can see, I'm looking at the map now, it's embraced, it's like hugged by places like Romalo, Reval, Brez, obviously, and Dambel, and those, and also Bolzano. It's right on the edge of the province of Bolzano. So why is that important? Well, there's a couple of reasons why that's important. One is that some of your female ancestors, you may have the surname of a particular place, but some of the females may have come from the adjacent parishes. So if you can't find a marriage record here, look for the parishes that are closest. The other reason is that it'll give you an idea of the diversity that is available, because frankly, the proximity to Bolzano, for example, there's a lot of Germanic influence in that particular part of the province. So the other thing is this. Sometimes you might see a surname in your parish that just doesn't belong. You go, I've never seen that before. That just doesn't belong. And I'll give you an example. In the article, I mentioned Paternoster. Now, Paternoster, I know from Romalo. And when I saw it starting to appear in Cloz, I said, wonder if this guy's from Romalo originally, or this family is from Romalo originally. So because I was familiar with the surrounding parishes. And so again, the more you get familiar with the surrounding surnames, because surnames tend to belong to certain villages, it helped me see, just take a hunch and look for him. Now, let me give you some tips on what to look for in the records. If you're looking at a Latin record, all right, if you're looking at a Latin record and it says that somebody in colla, blah, blah, blah. So it says in colla Cloz. In colla, I-N-C-O-L-A, means living in. When it says living in, it usually means that's not where they were from. It doesn't necessarily mean they came from another parish. They may have moved from one village to another within the same parish, but often it means they came from somewhere else. So if in this case, this Paternoster person, it said in colla Cloz, And I said, that tells me he probably wasn't from Cloz. And sure enough, the more I moved back, it finally said di Romano in Colla Cloz, which means from Romano living in Cloz. So look for that word in there, and that's in Latin. If it's in Italian, it might say nato Romano abita in Cloz, like that, meaning born in Romano, living in Cloz. But in Latin, Incola, Incola, is the word to look for in all of the older records. So getting to know the geography, get to know the neighbors, get to know your ancestors' neighbors. That's topic 3. Get to know your ancestors' neighbors. Okay? Now, topic 4, because we're almost at the bottom of the hour, so I only want to spend another less than 10 minutes. Topic 4 is don't overlook records that may not have surnames at all, because they could be your ancestors. This is what happened with the surname Canestrini. I got so excited about this. This is one of my most exciting discoveries, I thought, this week. Because it was real detective work. Well, so was the thing with the marriage. That was detective work, but that was last week. This week, the detective work I enjoyed was finding out the Canestrini family, because their surname, as I mentioned in the article, doesn't actually appear in the early records. Now, how did I find them? Well, I started noticing there were a whole lot of babies called Vincenzo being born in the mid-1600s, Vincenzo Canestrini, lots and lots of babies. And I said, well, if there are that many boys being called Vincenzo Canestrini all in the same time period, these are probably grandsons of somebody named Vincenzo, because, as we know from the naming patterns, the first sons are always, not always, but most of the time, called after the paternal grandfather. Okay? So I said, well, I need to look for Vincenzo and see if I can find any of these guys, the fathers, who were sons of a Vincenzo. So that's what I did. I started working my way back. I did find some, but then Cloz records ran out because they don't go that far back. They go back to 1599. There's a couple from the 1650s, but just like 3 of them, and there weren't any Canestrini, weren't Canestrini, there were other names. But I couldn't find the surname in the early records. So then here's the thing. This is the tip I want to give you. I started looking at it more broadly. Instead of just getting tunnel vision, trying to find a surname, I started looking for the name Vincenzo, just full stop. And because it's not that common a name, it's not totally uncommon, but it's not as common as, say, Giovanni or Pietro or any of those kinds of names. It's a little less common. Okay, so I was looking for Vincenzo's. So then I noticed that there was only really, apart from maybe one that had a different surname, completely different surname, there was only one, and he consistently appeared with the same wife, and sometimes didn't have a surname. And I mentioned this in the article. Instead of his surname, it referred to him as Maestro Vincenzo, it says muratore, but it meant muratore, which means a builder, a master builder, a mason, but not a bricklayer. He's calling him maestro. It means somebody really skilled, so like a master builder. And so basically, instead of calling him, Vincenzo Canestrini, he's calling him Vincenzo the builder, Vincenzo the master, and Vincenzo the builder. So in England, they say Bob the builder, that kind of thing. But anyway, it was just saying it over and over and over and over again. And then finally, I saw one record, just one, where it said Vincenzo, son of Vincenzo Canestrini, master builder. And then I said, okay. And then I worked my way back and I looked just for the builder. And that's when I found out that it said he was in Cloz, but not from there. And it said he was from Valcamonica, which is, as I mentioned in the article, in Lombardia. So he migrated. He was fresh there. He wasn't born in Cloz. So the name is an import, which I thought was really cool. I always get excited when I see names coming in from Lombardia. I don't know why. It's just quite excited. So then I was able to match up his sons and their professions, and you see the whole family continually being builders, masons and builders and stuff like that for the next 2 generations, which I found really interesting. So this is the tip. If you can't find your surname, if it seems to go off the face of the earth, start looking at the first name. Look for the first name that you believe your ancestor is, and then look for if there's one couple that is Vincenzo and Anna Maria. I forget what her name is, but keep looking for that couple again and again and again. I'll give you an example. John Bellotti in this group and I, we share a lot of common ancestors. Now, in the parish of Santa Croce, where most of our common ancestors come from, there are a lot of early families whose surnames don't appear in the records either, because they were using sopranome. And the only way to figure out who is who is to look for these couples and the villages that they live in, and see if you can consistently match them up, and then make a value judgment. Can you prove it? Well, history in general and genealogy especially is not always about proving. It's about finding enough overwhelming evidence or supporting evidence that says this has got to be the case. Now, in the case of Vincenzo and his wife, and the fact that the whole family were builders, all of the grandchildren were Vincenzo, and it says he was from Valcamonica, I am absolutely convinced I have the right family. So when you seem to run out of a surname, look for clues in other ways. Occupations, naming patterns of the grandchildren, consistent pairing of the husband and wife. So that's my tip. So what were the 4 tips? One was how history affects the records that we get. What was the second one I talked about? Hold on, I got to look them up. I just want to summarize. Yes. So how history affects it. Topic 2, using all the clues, all the available clues in the records that you do have, like I did with the parish, the marriage record, with the dispensation. Topic 3 was get to know your ancestral neighbors, because you might find pathways of tracing back that way if the more you know about your ancestors' neighbors. And topic 4 is don't get frustrated or think you've hit a brick wall if suddenly your ancestors don't seem to have any surnames. Look for clues in other ways. So those are the 4 topics I wanted to share with you today. These are all things that came to mind in working with Cloz, but really these can be applied to any kind of research that you're doing. And I hope that you take this all on board. That is it for now. The next Philo Friday is First Friday in October, which is October 2nd. I have no idea what the topic's going to be. I'm going to try again to draw it from what I'm researching. Hopefully by then I'll have an article on Revaux, which I promised would be the next one. That's bigger. Revaux is a lot bigger. There's a lot more to talk about, so I'm not quite sure how I'm going to present that, but it is something I will be doing next. I will be uploading this video plus last month's video to YouTube over this weekend, I hope. I didn't get to do last time because I've been just so busy. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found it helpful. Thank you, Robin. I'm glad you found it helpful. And please leave your comments. Let me know. And I'll see you in the room, and I'll see you next time. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.